Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a Dev Chat podcast. This is Dev Chat number 6, I believe, the Blue Temple update, which was released middle of August of 2022. We have with us two special guests, a returning member from the Puzzling Places team, Shah Shahrabi, the art director and game designer for Puzzling Places, and a extra special guest from outside of the Puzzling Places team, Aaron Cederberg, who is the person that actually scanned the Blue Temple itself in Thailand. So he's here to talk a little bit about how he came across the temple, how he scanned it, and just kind of, we're going to go through the entire process of like how we go from like a place in the real world to scanning it to then taking the scan and turning it into a really fun puzzle. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this episode, and we'll first kind of begin with Aaron. So I'll give a little bit of an introduction. Aaron, you're a photographer, a journalist, and a photogrammetry person. I guess we don't really have a good title for photogrammetrists yet, but maybe we'll come.
Photogrammetrist?
Photogrammetrist, why not?
Yeah.
You've gone around the world scanning a lot of things. And I think currently you also work for Brink XR, which is a photogrammetry, another VR app that uses photogrammetry as like a virtual tourism app, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Available on Oculus Quest 2.
That's right.
We had a cool update with multiplayer released recently, and the fun and related project. I think there's been some talk of cross-pollination with Puzzling Places.
Yeah,
So.
it would be really cool if we do like a crossover DLC, like the ultimate crossover event in VR between two photogrammetry apps. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about the Blue Temple, like how you came across it. I mean, how you even heard about it. How did you get to Thailand? And I think this was also, it's kind of a COVID story that you captured it. So yeah, take it away.
Yeah. So I just have, I got into photogrammetry kind of during the pandemic. I never had time or even a workstation because I was always traveling to work on this kind of stuff. And suddenly I had 2 years of sitting in one place and having a workstation. So I was able to kind of get all that done. And then I've been spending, the latter stages of that trying to figure out which direction to take it. And one of those directions is, of course, virtual production. And I have a friend that I had worked with on kind of another virtual production project that just, cold emailed me, said, "Hey, you want to go to Thailand?" And I was like, "Sure." And so the reason that we went was actually to scan an island in the south. Basically because there's a big old sign that says no drones, because usually it's like a really busy beach. It's famous. All the Instagrammers are doing their thing. And of course, you can't have like 50 people flying drones at the same time. But when they're still during shutdown, you can just stand next to that sign all day and kind of fly your drone around and capture the island. So we captured that island kind of with an eye towards, preparing it for virtual production. And then whenever I go places, I kind of don't like to just, go and then leave. So I kind of scheduled myself an extra week or two, week and a half, I think, to explore the rest of the country. And that brought me up to the northern city, Chiang Rai, just because I was, looking to kind of work on some concepts and ideas I had about strategies for capturing photogrammetry. And the Chiang Rai is kind of known as a city that has a variety of colorful temples. So there's a white temple, there's a black temple, there's a blue temple, which is the one that I scanned. And the reason I went there is just kind of, that if the white temple doesn't work out, you can, fall back on your blue temple. Because in my experience, it's basically impossible to write a cold email to someone and be like, "Hey, I want to create a 3D model of your place," and actually get a positive response. So you kind of just have to hop on a plane and go there and see what you can negotiate. And when you're doing that, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. Because there's a good chance people will say no, which is kind of what happened. I tried to scan the White Temple first, and they didn't give me permission because it's like a famous artist who, is a little more protective, I suppose, of the copyright. And the Blue Temple was very welcoming. They were kind of excited about using. They'd never heard of the VR and the 3D modeling stuff, but they were excited about just kind of anything that introduces it to a world stage. So actually, I still have an email address that I should send an email to and tell them like, hey, guess what? It's a puzzle now.
It's a game now. So I had
Yeah.
a question there for people who don't know the term virtual production. Can you just give like a very short 1-2 sentence what a virtual production is and how photogrammetry works there, why it's suited, and stuff like that?
Yeah. So the one tool that's developing, it's not going to replace like all the things, but in the VFX industry is basically you have an enormous TV screen, 100 feet wide, 30 feet tall, and you have a tracker on your camera that simulates exactly where your camera is. And when you do that, you can project on that TV screen exactly what the camera would see if you were running through a mountain range or, on an alien planet or something like that. So this is an interesting tool because as opposed to like green screen, you can put shiny objects in there and then you'll have realistic light on it because it's coming from the very expensive TV screen. And anyway, so one of the uses for photogrammetry is that it's a really great way to generate assets that look good on virtual production. It's also a challenge because photogrammetry kind of captures everything and it's all chaos, and you have to figure out a way to simplify it so that it's useful for that giant TV screen. So a lot of the work goes into that. But yeah, basically the vision is that you can kind of be a mid to low budget movie production and just download an island in Thailand and shoot your engagement scene, for example. Like because like if you're a mid to low budget movie, you don't have a budget to go fly to Thailand just to shoot some throwaway scene where like you have a wedding party or just like a bit of dialogue or something like that. And so trying to kind of bring these locations to just something you can download for a very reasonable price. I think it's going to open up a lot of possibilities for the movie industry to kind of expand how they tell stories, because usually they're quite limited by budget. You can't shoot a scene in the subway because it's like $5,000 just to submit an application. But what if you could bring the subway to people for less than that? Things like that. So
Nice. And so when you got there and you got permission and you started to scan it, like what does that typically look like? Does it take a couple hours? Does it take all day? Is it multiple days that you're scanning a site as like, complicated as the Blue Temple?
Yeah, so I tend to favor going over a number of days and not rushing it. Um, the advantage of northern Thailand at that time of year was that I had pretty consistent cloud cover the whole time, so I could scan it whenever throughout the day. But whenever I'm in a place that kind of has more limited cloud cover, then what I do is I come back. I kind of set a time during the day for each location, and I try to do pairs of location, so you can do like a morning location and evening location. And let's just say like 9:30 in the morning to 11 is location A, and then 4:30 to 6 is location B. And what that allows you to do is kind of spend an hour and a half here, an hour and a half there, and capture the location when the sun is in basically the same position. An hour and a half is kind of the limit of it. You start getting these the banding of the shadows after that, and so basically like you do that as many days as you need to in a row, and that way you're never rushed. The light's consistent, and you can do a really good job with it. So
How long
that's
did the Blue
strategy.
Temple take you then in this?
3 days on site, I think. Yeah.
And how many images in total did it take?
I want to say it was like 5,000, north of 5,000. I can't remember if it was 6.
That's a lot. And
was,
you're using a combination of a DSLR on the ground and then a drone to capture the aerial perspectives?
Yeah, so I mean, it was probably 90% ground, 95% ground, and then 5% drone, just because of the way this it was easy to capture. I also have a 3-meter carbon fiber pole that kind of allows me to pretend like I have a drone. So I didn't necessarily have to use the drone that much, except for the roof and kind of getting the vertical perspective on a lot of the statues just to kind of complete it.
Right. That's like a backup.
Yeah.
If you can't really fly a drone, you just stick it to a really long monopod, and you're holding it above your head.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah, it's Yeah, there's a lot of different things. I literally bought a kite off Amazon recently because I found out that it's surprisingly easy to fly a kite with a camera attached.
Really?
Yeah, I will report back on whether that works, but this is the kind of experimentation I'm doing
Please
to
do.
like find ways around it. Yeah.
That's interesting. That's great. So, yeah, 3 days, 5,000 images. I mean, that's quite a dense scan. Shah, should we look maybe at the result then? Because I think you have the
Sure.
scan open. Yeah,
I do have the
Mm-hmm.
scan open. Yes, indeed.
So I have to let me know when you're sharing your screen, and I can.
I already shared my screen.
Okay,
I have a watch screen option.
nice. Yeah, I just had to do something.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say this is a very, very clean scan, right? I mean, you're doing a incredible job, especially if you're saying like you learned photogrammetry during the pandemic, like in the past few years. This is incredibly impressive result. Like one of the things that really impressed me also was like seems like you have done some D-lighting. Is that true?
I de-light it, yeah, like just in Lightroom, the way I edit it, and because
Mhm.
this was especially because it was such a cloudy day. I mean, this is such a great example. And by the way, the full resolution of the scan is actually a lot higher than this.
Yeah, I can imagine
Just
the 6,000
this
DSLR.
is yeah, this is the thing about photogrammetry is the amount of data you capture is so much higher than what you can show in real time,
Yeah,
and the technology is going to advance and the techniques are going to advance, but there's a lot there that is untapped, which is kind of cool. But yeah, I de-shadowed it. I was helped along by just the weather. If I was in a desert location without any clouds, it would be a lot harder.
yeah.
You
So
can't.
for the viewers, the D-lighting is a process to kind of try to take the lighting out of
Mhm.
a mesh. Of course, if you're capturing in a cloudy day, as Aaron already said, you kind of have that already within. But as you can see, this is like very flat lighting, which is great because if we
Mhm.
want to have some specific atmosphere or emotion or mood associated with the composite, of course, it's better that it doesn't have lighting inside because then we can put our own lighting within the
Yeah.
thing. And the model you see in front of you is has 5 times the resolution um, compared to what you actually see in game. So in game, of course, it's not as high resolution as it is here because the Quest cannot handle something like that. But this is one of those locations. If we had the processing power, this could have been a 5,000 piece puzzle, and it will still be like an enjoyable puzzle for people to play. I don't know how much you would enjoy puzzling the blue carpets on the ground, but yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. That was challenging because I completed most of the puzzle yesterday,
nice.
and I was motivated, so I started with 400 pieces, and it was
Wow.
hard. I mean, I've looked at every square inch of this thing in many different ways, and I was like, what? Like
Aren't
trying
you?
to figure it all out.
Isn't it surprising when you're puzzling something, even if you spent hours and hours on hours there, both in person and on the 3D model, when you're puzzling it, you
Mhm.
do notice certain details that you just have not ever seen before. Did you notice that at all?
That is, yeah, that is very true. Especially the paintings on the inside. If you show that, because when you're capturing it, you're thinking about coverage, and I'm
Right.
just thinking in 3D. I'm thinking, what do I need to do to make sure? So I don't look and see like, all right, what's Buddha doing in that photo as opposed to that photo.
Right.
But when you do it with puzzling paces, and you're just staring at this particular piece with a particular thing, then you start noticing those things.
Yeah.
So it's cool. I have a lot of models on my computer, and not all of them turn into something. So it definitely adds to the experience when it finally ends up in a product or an experience of some sort.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a fundamental problem with the industry is that it's so much easier to capture a place than it is to turn it into something. So you can kind of go a little crazy and end up with like a library of 20, 30 places, and they just sit there.
Yep. Yep. We will be talking about the paintings a bit later because they have quite a significance within Buddhism. But can you tell me what
Mhm.
this is? As I was working on it, I was like, what is that a clock? It's also on
Yeah,
the other side.
it is a clock. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know. I didn't get a chance to ask what it signifies. But they have clocks on both sides, and
Yeah,
I
it's
can't remember
probably
if they were
fine.
counting. I think it was just the time of day. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't anything special. It's kind of a surprising choice that it's so like 1980s digital.
It
you
is,
Is
know?
it is.
there
It looks like some sort of timer.
is there like
Yeah.
prayer hours throughout the day that they need to be aware of in terms of like allowing people in and out or anything like that?
I mean, it sounds like Shah did more research on that than I did. I kind of didn't get a chance to really, do the second component of this, which is like learning more about the whole thing. So yeah, I don't know. I imagine that that's probably what that is, but I don't know the specifics of it.
The roof is so insanely detailed.
It is. Did you actually fly the drone inside too, or
No,
inside
no.
with DSLR? Okay, yeah, that's
Once I
probably
was in a large synagogue and I tried to fly a drone indoors, and ever since then I've decided it was a terrible idea.
it's very
Um,
risky. It's very risky.
yeah,
Did
you
you
lose all the orientation and stuff, and too dim.
did you need to use your monopod at all in here, or were you just capturing from further out to kind of get the angles?
No, I use the monopod. Yeah, so that's how I was able to get most of the top stuff. I mean, it wasn't. Still wasn't able to get great coverage of like the top of Buddha's lap. But yeah, like the monopod's a good tool. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Fanotech, but they make some really good carbon monopods that are portable and strong and good investment.
Can you
Yeah,
Because you can't always fly a drone.
can you
I
tell us?
mean, a bit of context again for the player. So if you're doing a photogrammetry capture and
Oh
you
yeah,
don't have information, as you can see here, for example, there is no information, right? That would lead to like a mess because the algorithm wouldn't know what to put in these areas. So
hmm
what you do with a drone, you try to cover everything. What you can do with a stick or a kite or whatever you have, or you can just try to go a bit further away. Maybe you can get a bit of it. And what we do
yeah,
usually, if you would see in the final puzzle that because we do photogrammetry yourself as well, we kind of know where the problem spots are and we go and fix it, as in we imagine what would have been there. And then we just kind of paint that in so that you don't notice the inconsistency. And in the other model, for example, you would see that these areas are all fixed from our side.
hmm Yeah, I mean, and then the thing is, like, this whole process is kind of a negotiation with like the monks that manage the place, and this is, like everybody's coming in here and taking selfies, and their family gathers in front and takes photo together in front of it. So it's not like it's a harsh and austere environment by any means, but at the same time, like you do feel pretty self-conscious if you take this big 3 meter pole and start like sticking it over the altar in front, because I could have captured that area, but I just would have had to be, I
Yeah,
felt,
Right.
crossing some line.
yeah,
That's
yeah. Of course.
that's what I wanted to ask was, so as the result, one of the results of photogrammetry scanning a place is that it just looks empty because anything that was
hmm
moving, like people moving in and out, they don't end up becoming part of the scan unless they were standing extremely still for all 3 days, right? And they would
hmm
show up like a statue. But here it's the average across all the images, and so it's just super empty. But what was it like when you were there in person?
Yeah, I mean, again, it was, so I got there, like, I don't know the numbers exactly, but basically they said this is how tourists can come visit Thailand, and then I was there like 2 weeks later.
You're saying
So
after COVID when they opened their borders, or during
yeah,
COVID?
and they had, yeah, I mean, I don't know at what point we're still during or off, or I don't know. But the restrictions were still quite heavy. We had to prepay for 5 COVID tests and spend 2 weeks kind of quarantining on that island that we were scanning. It was coincident that you were allowed to quarantine there as part of your process, and then once you unlock kind of those 2 weeks of passing the COVID tests and spending all that time on the island, where they just made sure everybody on the island was fully vaccinated, so it was a safer affair. And so anyway, once you pass that, then you can go to the rest of the country. So when I went to Chiang Rai, basically nobody was able to go there as far as tourism, because the only people that were capable were people that either stayed in Thailand for the whole affair, or people who spent 2 weeks on an island and kind of gained this right to travel in the rest of the country. So it was definitely slow, but there was plenty of kind of local. They had a curfew, but you could hang out up until 8 p.m. And so there were plenty of people walking around. It was sparse enough that it wasn't an issue, and coming back 3 days means that there wasn't any. They didn't affect the scan at all. And yeah, and then as far as interacting with people, it was just it was a very a lot of people were taking pictures, so
Right.
it was kind of weird that I was doing it for 8 hours straight.
Right, and
but
taking
nobody
pictures of
seemed
the
to mind.
floor and like things that people would just never
Yeah.
capture. That's what always looks so weird to people when you're scanning. You're just like, so many pictures
Yeah.
of the floor, and people are like, man, this is the worst photographer in the world. Like,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the Buddha.
Maybe he's doing a coffee table book about rugs,
Yeah.
like around the world.
So
That probably exists.
the reason I asked you about the atmosphere is I think this is a good segue to lead into a little bit of like the direction we took with the puzzle, because in our puzzle we added a lot of little elements, a lot of people, a lot of like also sound effects, and like just it's less serene than the scan sort of suggests it to be in terms of like just super quiet in the middle of nowhere. So Shah, I guess you can take it away from here. Kind of give us a little bit of like how you approached when you got this mesh. You did your research into the location, and then what? How did you create how do we create a puzzle after that?
Oh yeah. For those who kind of missed the previous dev chat, which was about behind high walls, I kind of went in a bit about our process of how we come up with directions. So kind of a super short summary is I get the mesh and then I start coming up in the same way you would plan a film or any other production or a painting or whatever. You try to come up with the themes, like the things that really interest you on the spot. These themes would be kind of the compass during the production to decide things like lighting and color and what is going to where and stuff like that. For this one specifically, usually starts with some sort of research. It's not just a visual research. I also look into the history of the place, what's interesting about it, to try to come up with concepts that would be appealing or interesting. And for this one specifically, the thing that was struck me first was just the sheer amount of detail that was there. So I knew that whatever we did, I didn't want our direction to get in the way of the detail. I didn't want the detail to be reduced so that the players don't get to enjoy all the intricate things added to it. So this is like a Buddhist temple. And as I said before, I just want to tell you guys a bit about like what you would expect from a temple like this. So the temple is positioned in a city that is known for kind of like innovating on Buddhism and art and everything. Aaron already mentioned the White Temple, which is a very famous temple in Thailand, which usually in Thailand you have Buddhist structures are these like golden domes that you might know from photos, right? That's what people associate. What you see here is actually quite uncommon, which is the more classic, like traditional Thai architecture done as a Buddhist temple. So the White Temple is actually have some pictures here. It's also very stunning. The architect who did the White Temple was the teacher of the person who designed the Blue Temple. So you can see the similarities there. So it's already kind of like was interesting looking at the history of the place, which was built in 2006. It comes from an idea of an art movement to kind of modernize a certain aspect of Buddhism or Thai culture. So that was already an interesting starting point. And you see that in a lot of the aspects of the actual temple. So on the two sides, you have the mythical creatures, which are the guardians of the temple, and this would be the main entrance. And there you have the statue of Buddha in already in transcendence, and it's made out of porcelain actually, which is really hard to scan. We actually had to do some fixing there also to make the mesh a bit like more smooth surface. Here you have all the paintings, and typically within a Buddhist temple, the paintings kind of showcase the different stages of the life of Buddha. And this is also another area where the paintings have kind of deviated from what is traditionally known within the Buddhist temples, because the paintings are a lot more realistic, which is uncommon. And also, I had a hard time figuring out what each individual one was, despite because it's usually the same themes, but I still couldn't tell which one was which because it's not the typical way Buddha is shown. Like this one is probably his birth, as Buddha was born. To some account, the mother dies. It's one of the stages that he's born and then he walks around and lotuses start popping up under his feet. Then here you have, these are not, they don't seem to be in order to me. Since he's very thin, this is known as the skeleton Buddha. This is for a period of time where trying to reach ascension, he kind of stopped eating. He would like have like a leaf or a grain of rice in the entire day. And he started getting some following and being known for it. This looks like actually like the when he's already reaching transcendence. You can't see all these details in the final puzzle, unfortunately, so I'm not going to cover them too much. This is probably the time where he almost drowned because he was so weak, and a little girl gives him some rice or some porridge or whatever, and he starts eating again, and he reaches the midway Buddha, which is you don't have to give up all earthly pleasure. You kind of have to find a midway between living in this world and trying to transcend the cycle of rebirth. So yeah, then reaching the transcendence under the Buddha tree should be probably a painting where demons try to distract him. So this is a very typical thing you would find in different Buddhist temples around Thailand and also China or whatnot. However, there is a difference between Buddhism in China and Buddhism in Thailand, like places like China, Japan, and Korea. So Japan and Korea got their brand of Buddhism from China during the time of Hai Tang, which would be like 8th century, or even later, sometimes the Northern Song dynasty, which would be through the 10th and 11th. And the brand of Buddhism that they got is Chan Buddhism, which in Japan is known as Zen Buddhism, which is the typical type of Buddhism very known in their thing. But places like Laos or Myanmar or Thailand, they actually got their brand of Buddhism through the sea merchant earlier than the Tang dynasty. So their brand of Buddhism is quite different to the Korean and Japanese and Chinese. The Chinese one has a bit of more Taoism inside, and concept of immortals are even more expressed there. So this was kind of all the research I started doing before to kind of try to understand what makes the location what it is. And we have, as usual, a board, which is the place where I kind of start thinking already about, okay, what's special about the place? And I come up with concepts. And the core idea here was, as I was going through the references, I noticed something quite interesting. This is a holy place, but it was constructed 2006. So it kind of feels old. It feels ancient. It feels celestial. At the same time, it is a tourist spot. It's not as touristy as something like the White Temple, but people still go there and take photos. What I love here is a Buddhist monk taking a photo with his smartphone, which is an interesting picture, right? That really remained in my mind, the contrast between the holiness of the location as well as the tourism and the everyday life. Again, here you have another Instagrammer going around and taking like with a wide angle a shot. Both of these actually ended up being in the puzzle. For the people who have finished it, they know the figures actually are around the puzzle. So like you would see stuff like that, especially in Thailand, because in Thailand, Buddhism and the monarchy kind of go hand in hand. And you would see a lot of people who have no intention of being hardcore religious people still going through the monk training, right? So people might still do the entire training and become a monk, although they have no intention of living as a monk for the rest of their life, because it's very integrated within the country. So the holy places are a bit more mundane, right? So this was kind of the beginning point, right? The contrast was the beginning point. And so I started thinking about how do we kind of bring this dynamic in. So on one side, I wanted to have something holy. So these were the early light tests that I did, something a bit like holy, something spiritual. There I thought about the weather in Thailand, which you have, like, as Aaron said, it was overcasted for 3 days. It's very, very humid and a lot of rain. So I wanted to do something with cloud and something with rainstorms. But at the same time, I wanted to have these streaks of God rays coming in. So we kind of baked that lighting in there. Again, just like behind high walls with the so-called fortress. The challenge is how to ensure that the lighting doesn't destroy detail, so that you guys still get to enjoy the intricate details that is present in the actual artwork without, I just want to add the mood on the top. I don't want to destroy the location. So that was kind of like the base idea. And the other idea was to kind of contrast this with the mundane things by putting like an Instagram guy there and like the Buddhist monk and the tourist. And this is where visual research is very important. This is my artistic side of research, to just kind of like find paintings and artists I already know who are quite good at creating this atmosphere of not necessarily holiness, but a special moment where you look at a landscape or a location and you're like, wow, that's what's going on here. Something divine, something sublime. That's the word I'm looking for, sublime. Um, and this is the visual research part. If you want to have authenticity, as Azad said, because things that are moving in photogrammetry kind of go away, photogrammetry models always feel like a ghost town. And one of the things we have started doing, which we very much enjoy, is to try to give back some of those moving elements so that it feels more like a living diorama than a static dead scene. And this is where the visual research comes in, where you start looking at different elements that are in the location, in the culture, and you use these details to make decisions. Like one of the things I really love, for example, are the shoes, right? In Iran as well, but in the East, it's very common that you just don't walk with shoes everywhere. If you go to a place, you take your shoes off, they might give you slippers or whatever. You might know that from like Japanese and Korean entertainment. And I just love that detail, which is also something we added. Someone is taking their shoes off before going to the thing. It's a place where you can put your shoes. The temple itself, known as the Dancing Tiger, I believe, translated, not the Blue Temple. So apparently, back in the days, there used to be quite a few tigers just roaming around in the older temple, which was abandoned. And I really wanted to add the tiger, right? Now the question was, is this realistic? Like I don't want to completely destroy the immersion. So I started doing some visual research, and there are two spots where they have like tigers on leash for people to look at or whatever. So I'm pretty sure there was no tiger in the Blue Temple. I think Aaron can say more about that. But
No, there was not.
There was not, unfortunately not.
Yeah.
But this is a place where I kind of like suspended that disbelief, and I was like, whatever. Somewhere in Thailand there are tigers where tourists can come and see. So I'm just gonna put that in there. These images,
yeah, it's like a good flourish based on the name of the place. I mean,
yeah,
like anyway, just I don't want the fact that there wasn't tigers to take away from the fact that you really kind of, I think, hit it on the nail with the vibe of the place. The mix of modern and old and things like that. But
yeah, it's a tricky balance always to how far can you take it until the suspension of disbelief just becomes disbelief. So yeah, but that's true for any content creator, I suppose. So in these type of images, it kind of goes back to some of the things I was saying, that Buddhism in Thailand is still kind of integrated within the monarchy. There are two main sects. One of them is connected directly to the king. It's very well integrated within the society itself. So you have a lot of like kids and whatnot who go through the Thai through the Buddhist education. And I really wanted to add like a little Thai Buddhist kid just like running around, which we added. I wanted that guy to be playful. I don't know if you guys know the title of the film is quite a mouthful. It's like spring, summer, whatever. It's like all the season and the spring again. It's a very long title. And it's just the story of a monk with a monking trainee or like something like that. And it's the story of this boy becoming, kind of embracing that. So I kind of want to add the contrast again, because the core of this puzzle was on the direction, the contrast. So I wanted to add that contrast between the playful youngster and the stoic priest. This is also something that was really fun. Is I usually try to look at the local culture and the music pieces and whatnot. Adding stuff like this is, of course, really fun for a sound designer, because he can do a lot of stuff with them if he wishes. He doesn't have to, but within the time constraint that he has, he can add some stuff. So these are all local instruments from the location, which have a very nice sound. Especially these, like, they're not a gong. I don't know how to describe them well, but they kind of do remind me of a thunderstorm, or at least droplets of water hitting a metallic surface, which was going really well with this before the storm atmosphere, which I was trying to go for. Something I realized later, which unfortunately I didn't know at the time. If I knew, I would have definitely added it, is when you get out of the temple, there's ice cream to be bought on hot days. And I would have definitely wanted to add that. Unfortunately, I didn't have the time. The last piece is the umbrellas, which we basically used all of these information. There's something didn't actually found. I know I read about it, but one of these gates is supposed to look like the mouth of a demon and it's supposed to be the portrayal of hell. But I'm actually seeing it anymore. Weird. So here's the mesh at the end, which we got to. It's gonna of course play the chime. Yeah, the chimes, they're really fun. That's the topic that I'm gonna get to in a sec. But yeah, you will see all the details that we added, like the shoes. We do put a lot of thoughts in stuff like that. No notices it, and it's also okay. It's also meant to be like that. But for example, putting the shoes there, we did think about, okay, how many people are actually in the temple? Like, we don't want to have too many shoes there because the complex is a bit bigger than what you see here. So we have a bit more shoes than what's there. So you see like a person coming and taking the shoes off. There you see like with the umbrella, which is actually a sun umbrella. There you have the players playing the piece and getting a bit of money. Would have probably added the ice cream vendor here, but unfortunately didn't. So this is the playful little monk and the guy who's actually doing the work. We have the Instagram guy here with another like form of detail is like the first Daniel, the first my coworker, the first iteration that he did, the lens was longer. And I was like, no, that's like 50 millimeter. Like from this angle, you want like a 18 or 20 or whatever, like change it to something else. So we actually made the thing shorter. So yeah, details, right? Details are what makes things like that fun. You have the tiger here. The inside, you have the monk, which is my favorite guy. There is the someone just relaxing and looking. We didn't have the time to add the figure that I wanted to add, unfortunately, which was the hipster European. In a lot of the like pictures that I saw the hipster. I want to say yoga-fied European. That probably says namaste all the time. With like the dreadlocks and the Alibaba pants. Unfortunately, I was going to add it here to the side. Didn't have the time for that. So yeah, that was kind of like the stuff that we kind of added on top. The chimes was a kind of a big deal for this one because this is the type of info like detail where we love to add for sound, we love to add for kind of like taking the immersion to the next level or interactivity. At the same time, like the lighting you see here has so much more effects on your playing experience than the chime because the chimes are so tiny. They add a moment of excitement, but it's really hard to know, is the effort going to be worth it? Because it is a considerable amount of effort to add something like this. The jump you see, by the way, is because the animation starts from beginning on in Blender. So it's considerable amount of effort, and especially in our case, because we can't just like have these as individual objects in our game and then just move them around as we wish, because that would not be optimized enough for Oculus Quest, right? For Oculus Quest, you would have to do a lot of tricks to get something like this going, which for one or the other who's a developer and is interested, I think I will probably cover this in a blog post, which I'm probably going to post on Tuesday or whatever, go on the technical details of how we actually did the chime. But artistically, it was just important to have the chime there because we wanted to have the weather, like just before the storm or the passing storm weather. We thought about having like lighting tricks where the lighting again moves, but that was way more work than to just add the chimes to kind of embody the wind movement, right? To also give our sound designer a chance to, through the sound, create an atmosphere of wind and the humid weather that we wanted to go for. So yeah, that's basically it. We had a lot of fun making this, as we always do, making everything. I wish you guys had a lot of fun too. It was an absolute pleasure to work on this. And since the moment I saw the Blue Temple, I thought this is going to be one of our better puzzles because, you know, it's inside, outside. It has such an insane amount of detail. And yeah, and I think it lends itself really well to adding stuff to it and kind of like improving or kind of adding emotions to it because of the way the mesh is set up.
Despite the fact that it's supposedly all one color, it's actually not a monotonous and very, boring or difficult puzzle. I mean, it's challenging in some parts, but it has so much to it, so much variety, so many areas where you can really group certain pieces together and really have a good idea about where to begin puzzling.
Exactly. We would have done even more, but it's always the question of time, right? Like one of the things that we thought about is again like kind of like what we did in so-called Fortress is use shadows to indicate there is a world outside of the puzzle. So that's always fun to do because you would see shadows of the environments around the puzzle. Uh,
Right.
Although you don't actually see them. So this meta level of design is something I really have fun with. Didn't really have the time for it as much, but one of the things that we did add is like turning on these lanterns. Another thing we actually wanted to do was kind of like do it in a way that the lanterns can flicker in real time. Didn't have the time for that either. Remains another premium puzzle. Maybe at some day we actually have the time to do real time lighting. Not really real time, but at least have the illusion of real time lighting.
Right.
But these colors were all kind of added for creating that visual interest, kind of creating the cozy feeling that you might have before the storm, contrasted with the feeling of inside, right? So the inside is kind of like drier and a refugee type of like a little refuge for the people who are in there. And also on top of that, of course, the warmer colors contrast really well with the blue. So we do try to add color variation all the time to make the puzzling a bit easier for you rather than harder.
And every single one of these little dioramas and scenes also has its own regional sound effects that our sound designer Pierre Marie worked on. Unfortunately, he's not here to tell us a little bit more about that, but it's all designed to create this like very interesting atmospheres with their own tiny little worlds that you can see. Like there's rain and thunder happening on the outside, but like inside there's like monks singing and all the visual things that Shah's talking about here is all mirrored and reflected also in the audio in the hope to create these atmospheres.
Exactly.
The
Exactly.
chimes, I mean, it's briefly worth mentioning the chimes. I mean, this is one of the more requested features from the very first day where people were like, can you add animations into these puzzles? Can you make things move? And we're like, well, technically yes, but we're very limited in what we can do on the quest, especially because we're also like it's not just quest 2, it's also quest 1 that everything has to work on. So we were always hesitant with adding moving things and animations, but when we do have the time and let's say budget, we do try to find ways of doing it. And this is the second puzzle that we've done this. The last one was in the Behind High Walls, in the Alcazar Castle puzzle with like the flags waving. So that was, I think, the testing ground to see if we can do it. And then here Shah and Daniel really took it one step further into having these really beautiful little chime swinging animations. They add a lot. They add
Yeah.
so much to the scene.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And the thing you see here again, if you see it loops because it's in Blender in the game, it doesn't have that behavior. It is like so much mathematics has gone in for this to happen. Because the way to do this in a way that Quest can handle it, you can't do it in the traditional way of like baking animation or whatever. You have to construct the whole thing mathematically in the GPU so that it's done in an optimized way. And it's always like, as I said before, I always I know that this is going to be a lot of work. The question is it going to be worth it? And I think the first time I looked at the chime in VR, I held a piece in my hand and then you could see them move around. I was like, it is worth, like, I am so happy with this result. It brings so much life to the otherwise static piece. And
Yeah.
yeah, we would see if we can do more of this in the future. They do take a lot of time.
One other thing I want to point out is that Aaron, this scan is so detailed that like all these the spire, I don't know if they're called spires, but like Shaw, maybe focus on the rooftop golden dragons that are coming out. There's just so many little integral details in the topology and the geometry of the mesh, and like this is like pushing our optimization and pipeline to its limits so that it can look good and run well on Quest because there's so
Yeah, I mean,
much there.
I can just show it as a comparison, right? Like these are like completely detailed, uh, pardon the fast camera movement. I just have to. But these are like completely detailed dragons here, right?
Yeah,
And
and especially
it's completely,
the front two dragons, the blue ones.
You mean the
the
Guardians?
other, yeah, the
Yeah, the Guardian,
Guardians.
yeah,
They're just so crazy, and like I wish we could preserve all the details, but
you
it's
can see every single scaling there. That's nice.
yeah, it's
That's
beautiful.
nice. Well, some distance future, maybe we can like remaster the Blue Temple with a 10,000 piece puzzle. It takes you 7 years to finish it.
Yeah, the future is bright. I mean, we're starting with like really limited hardware with the Quest and Quest 2. I think things can only improve from here when it comes to the performance that we can use, with photogrammetry, with puzzles, how many pieces we can have, and how detailed each piece can be, and what resolution the headsets are. I think things really will improve, and it might be that in 5 years, 10 years, even playing these original puzzles that are being released now might just look better in like really high res headsets. I think I already felt that with the Quest 2 playing this game that was made for Quest 1. Right? Was the Quest 2 launched when we? Yeah, sorry. The Quest 2 was definitely out when the game came out, but I was playing on a Quest 1, so didn't exist for me.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the Quest 2 was out because we added some updates later to it. But
Might be. Oh, speaking of which, we're basically 2 weeks away from our 1 year anniversary for the full launch of Puzzling Places. So that's really exciting. I mean, we hadn't really thought of the Blue Temple being a free update as like a celebration of the 1 year anniversary. But you can kind of consider that. I think if we had time at 2 weeks to it, it definitely would have been perfectly lined up. But we will also have something special for our 1 year anniversary, so just have a look out for that. It won't be a puzzle, unfortunately. We can't suddenly put out another amazing puzzle like this, but we have a nice little present that people could take advantage of. Yeah, this has been really fun, guys. Aaron, I mean, is there anything from your side that you want to add here, or last thoughts that you want to share? Oh, I think you're muted. Shah, can you hear Aaron?
I cannot hear it.
Oh, weird. I can't. Why can't I hear?
He changed his headphones, so
Just for some reason maybe the thing died.
they spot the difference.
This is just Discord, classic Discord things that happen when it comes to. Wait, but Shah, were you able to hear him, or can you?
Before, yeah, but not now.
But not now.
I couldn't hear him.
Okay,
I
no
couldn't hear
worries.
him with the black headphone.
We'll wait for him to set things up once again. You can just keep speaking, and when we hear you, Aaron, we'll let you know that it's coming through. But it is funny, like Aaron scanned this for virtual production. I don't think he had in mind that it would turn into a puzzle with this, but it kind of is. This is a virtual production. We totally used it as a scene asset, and we added to it and turned into something beautiful.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, yeah, it's working. Okay, great.
Okay. Yeah, your voices all got squeaky. The screen turned green, and my computer shut down completely. So I don't know what happened, but I guess I'm back. Anyway,
Right.
I might have missed a few things, but
You
it
can
was
watch the
cool
replay.
getting up to the point where I got cut off. Yeah.
You can catch the replay on YouTube when it's up in probably a few days.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just last thing I was saying is you captured this for the purposes of like virtual production, but you probably weren't expecting for it to be used as a puzzle like this. But I guess it did totally get used as a virtual production set because we did do a lot of things to it, just from a very different perspective and for a different end use case rather than a film or a TV show.
Yeah, I mean, it's just cool how much this stuff can have multiple different lives. Many uses that you can find for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's also, I think it's just tailor made for this kind of thing because, yeah, very few other locations around the world put so much detail into the walls and the ceiling and the statues and things like that. So it'd be hard to do some other locations that maybe have more repetitive geometry or something like that, or more, solid colors.
So yeah, we have a lot of things coming up soon. Our next puzzle pack is going to be the Ukraine pack, which we're really excited about because it's the proceeds. The majority of the proceeds are going to humanitarian relief aid and effort. So we're going to be launching that in early September, and so keep an eye out for that. We have, of course, a new puzzle pack coming every month. We're already starting working on another special puzzle that might come out later this year. And also, we have the roadmap channel on our Discord if you really want to see more details about like what we're working on, whether that's the content or features. Multiplayer is still in the works. At some point, we will do probably like a closed beta testing ground where we will invite people that will sign up to test multiplayer. We'll invite them into a group and start doing testing. We haven't yet begun that, but it will come. So just join our Discord, have your notifications on, and we'll notify people. Apart from that, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Shah, any final words from you?
Yeah, I wish at some point we can do the White Temple, Aaron. Go and scan it.
Yeah, I mean, with more, I have the guy's email address. Maybe if I have a little bit more institutional support, they'll say yes.
Maybe you
So,
can just kind of use the work of the student to be like, hey, look, this is being enjoyed. Would the master like to have the same situation?
well,
Uh,
yeah, that's exactly what I thought. I guess just maybe send them a quest 2 or something. I don't know. But yeah, it would be really like cool.
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
hopefully we work together again, Aaron, with more interesting scans from around the world that you've captured. I know we've talked about a few things, so yeah, keep an eye out, players, for more interesting scans coming from Aaron. And hopefully also in the future in other dev chats we will invite more guests to join us that have contributed to our puzzle library, especially like Aaron. Everyone has their own story of photogrammetry and how they do things, and like the funny things that happen as you do these scans. So there's a lot of stories here to share. Yeah, once again, thank you all for listening and for joining in, and for people that are watching this later on YouTube. Thank you for Aaron for joining us and sharing us with your stories.
All right.
All
Yeah.
right.
Thanks for everything.
Yep. And we'll see you next time. Goodbye.